Tonight on Primetime, a bold blueprint for Gaza's future is now on the table, promising phased demilitarization, new civilian rule and international oversight. Yet, its most crucial players remain publicly unconvinced so far. Diplomacy races ahead while bombs still fall. Good evening, I'm James Ezimoham. Now, Donald Trump says a plan has been negotiated to disarm Hamas and replace its role in Gaza, but neither Hamas nor Israel has publicly endorsed the proposal as strikes continue.
US President Donald Trump says his administration's Board of Peace has negotiated a plan for the complete disarmament of Hamas and other armed groups in Gaza. According to the proposal, weapons would be surrendered in stages, tunnels dismantled, and Israeli forces would withdraw gradually as agreed benchmarks are met. Security during the transition would be overseen by an international stabilization force, alongside a restructured Palestinian police service. The plan also envisages a technocratic Palestinian administration replacing Hamas as Gaza's governing authority. President Trump described the proposal as a major step towards ending the conflict and thanked Egypt, Qatar and Turkey for helping to mediate the negotiations. However, key questions remain. Hamas has not publicly confirmed that it accepts the disarmament plan. Previous negotiations have shown the group insisting that any discussion of giving up its weapons must be linked to a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Israel has yet to formally endorse the latest proposal and has consistently maintained that Hamas must be fully demilitarized before any long-term settlement can be reached. The diplomatic announcement also comes as violence continues on the ground. Israeli strikes were reported in Gaza on Thursday, highlighting the gap between political negotiations and the reality of the conflict, despite renewed international efforts to secure a lasting ceasefire.
Now, Turkey could emerge as a key diplomatic winner after helping broker a Gaza disarmament framework, though doubts remain over Hamas's position, Israeli approval, and how the deal would be enforced. Adamoro has more from Istanbul.
U.S. President Donald Trump says a breakthrough agreement on the complete disarmament of Hamas and other armed groups in Gaza has been reached with the help of mediators from Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. If implemented, the deal would mark Ankara's biggest diplomatic contribution yet in the Gaza conflict, reflecting months of quiet contacts with Hamas alongside Cairo and Doha. Turkey has consistently positioned itself as a mediator, maintaining communication channels with Hamas while also engaging in Israel, the United States, and regional Arab states. Turkish officials have repeatedly called for a permanent ceasefire, increased humanitarian access to Gaza, and a political settlement leading to Palestinian self-governance. According to Trump, the deal envisages a phased disarmament process, an eventual Israeli military withdrawal, and the establishment of a new Palestinian administration under international oversight. But key questions remain over implementation, verification, and Israel's position, while Hamas has yet to publicly endorse Trump's characterization of the agreement. Turkey has played an increasingly active diplomatic role throughout the conflict, coordinating closely with Egypt and Qatar, both of which have mediated indirect talks between Israel and Hamas. If the new agreement takes effect, it would underscore Ankara's growing influence as a key regional mediator and could represent a significant step towards ending nearly 3 years of violence in Gaza. This is Adamaro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Now let's bring in Dr. Nuhan Elbaya, professor at Istanbul Ayden University and a consultant at the United Nations Development Program. Join us from Istanbul, Turkey. Good to have you, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Now, could this be the first realistic way to get Hamas to give up its weapons while Israel pulls back at the same time?
Well, we have all seen the announcement of President Trump, and also he mentioned that finally both sides are ready for this disarmament agreement. But let's have a realistic look. Hamas, they announced that they are ready to disarm their heavier weapons only, and they will keep the smaller ones. This is number one. Number two, both sides have lots of potential points of disagreement. This is the first one. The second one, they also, Hamas mentioned that we are ready to implement this agreement, but first, Israel supposed to end all forms of violence and also to withdraw from the in control area. When we're talking about the in control areas in Gaza, we're talking about more than 50% of Gaza. So, and at the same time, we didn't hear anything yet from Israel. They didn't announce, they didn't comment on what's going on yet. And when we are talking about the forms of aggression or violence, don't forget that since the ceasefire agreement back October 2025, more than 1,200 Palestinians have been killed, and more than 73 Palestinians have been killed since October 2023. So Israel has the power to pause or to destroy this agreement. They have this power, and they have also the power to renew or to relaunch the attacks again. Actually, they are attacking Palestinians regularly every day. So also, let's talk about the mechanism. Also, let's talk about the time frame. What about the time frame? No time frame, fixed time frame have been set. As per the Board of Peace, they said that each phase will depend on the other.
Dr. Abaya,
This is
unrealistic.
unrealistic.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have much to get through. Now, does international oversight make this plan more credible, or is it still relying on two sides that simply don't trust each other?
The oversight definitely they are important because they are providing this phase with more with monitoring, with transparency, with accountability also. But oversight, we cannot substitute them for a political dialogue or political also commitment. Both sides in this case, Israel and Hamas, supposed to commit to what's mentioned in this agreement. So here, the international oversight supposed to be viewed as confidence building tool rather than guarantee of success of succeed.
Yeah. So speaking of Hamas, if Hamas gives up control of Gaza and puts its weapons under Palestinian Authority, is that enough to call this a real breakthrough?
Definitely no. It's not enough. Yes, if the implementation will be in a very successful way, definitely it will be a very significant step, very significant move. But it's not enough. Breakthrough needs not only security measurements. Security measurement cannot produce long-lasting or lasting peace. So security measurement is only one element, but it should be beside so many things. It should be beside governance, institutional functioning. It should be alongside economic or economy recovery, also respect of international law. So security measurements or security development alone is not enough to build or to produce lasting peace.
Now, are Israel and Hamas actually agreeing to the same thing, or are they still using the words disarmament to mean completely different things?
This is very central and very major challenge because, in peace agreements, parties, they are using terminologies, same terminologies, but carrying different meanings. In this case, in our case, disarmament for Israel, it means eliminations of all military capabilities. But for Hamas, it's about transferring the weapons to recognized Palestinian authority or organization under specific conditions. We can easily recognize the differences between both meanings. So it's very important to remove any misunderstanding to avoid any future conflict.
Now, speaking about avoiding future conflicts, what happens if weapons are hidden, tunnels remain open, or another armed group refuses to take part?
And this is the expected scenario, by the way, because we have to make sure here in this scenario or in this case that verification methods will be used, and this will be the responsibility of the Palestinian Technocrat Committee, because without this, easily the violence and the conflict and the instability will renewed again. Especially here, we are not talking about Hamas. We are talking about other militias in Gaza. For example, Jabhat al-Nusra, one of them. So if one of those militias are not included, so it will be very easy and the risk will be very high for renewal of instability again in Gaza.
Now, finally, Dr. Elbaya, if this plan works, does it bring lasting peace any closer, or does it only deal with Gaza's immediate security problems?
Creating lasting peace is a very big word. Security developments or security measurement is not enough to create this. We have to consider what's happening now in terms of let's consider that the implementation will be successful. We should consider this as foundation, not as a final result or final step. This is supposed to be step number one, foundation, to build on it lots of things. For example, economy recovery, for example, governance, successful governance, building institutions, respecting international law, humanitarian recovery, and the humanitarian aid, reconstruction, even those all together alongside security measurement, yes, definitely can build last peace. But only security measurement or transferring authority or transferring weapons, definitely not enough to build lasting peace. So this is supposed to be foundation, not last step or not result.
Thank you. That was Dr. Nurhan Elbaya, professor at Istanbul Aydın University. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, after the break, we'll take a closer look at mounting pressure on Spain over mass crossings into its North African enclave. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time. Now, Spain says the mass crossings into its North African enclave violate its territorial integrity as Madrid deploys additional resources and Europe tightens security while blaming organized smuggling networks. William Denslow has more from Brussels.
Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has described this huge surge in people crossing into Ceuta as a violation of Spain's territorial integrity. He says he will be deploying all available state resources to try and address the situation. When it comes to how to do that, well, there's proposals such as putting buoys out to sea to show the physical borders of territory, marking this Spanish enclave on African soil from the territory of Morocco. Now, when it comes to blame, Pedro Sanchez saying that this was the fault of human trafficking mafias taking advantage of a recent Spanish Supreme Court decision regarding the ability to return those trying to cross irregularly from Morocco into Ceuta or Melilla. Now, this comes despite speculation as to whether this was part of ongoing geopolitical tensions we've seen in the past between Spain and Morocco. But Pedro Sanchez not mentioning any blame when it came to Morocco authorities. There has been fierce criticism from a number of groups, especially in the far right, across Europe. In Spain, the opposition groups have said that more action is needed, some describing it as an invasion. Spain's Interior Minister noting that thousands have subsequently been returning back to Morocco on Friday. There's also been criticism across the European Union. We've heard from representatives in the Italian government saying that they should suspend the freedom of movement through Schengen with Spain for the time being. France has also said that it is bolstering its security checks along its borders with Spain for the time being. We've also heard from Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President. Now, she says that what we're seeing in the region is unacceptable. She says that smuggling networks must be dismantled. She says that anyone seeking to enter the bloc must abide by the rule. She said that she is seeking full cooperation with Morocco to try and address this issue. William Denslow, Frey News, Brussels.
Joining me now is Gonzalo Teles, political commentator and founder and consultant of Grid Communication and Political Risk, speaking to us from Lisbon, Portugal. Good to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Now, why is this happening now? What has suddenly pushed so many people to make the crossing?
Well, first, I think that there's a legal trigger here, and that was well positioned in the piece that you guys just passed concerning the Supreme Court of Spain, when it actually said that it declared actually that people that were going through the sea would not have to return to Morocco, that there was a sort of free pass compared to people that would try to go to Spain through the land. And then there's here a cooperation problem naturally with Morocco. And we can't take out of this equation Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain's recent visit to Algeria. And that might have had a reaction here from Morocco, because what we see from these images is Moroccan guards just letting people go and not doing anything. So there was naturally a security positioning in the Moroccan side that just was not competent.
Now, Europe relies heavily on Morocco to control migration. Has that given Rabat too much leverage?
It's a good question. I think that since 2019 and 2020, with the EU cooperation agreement towards Morocco, that definitely gave Morocco lots of leverage. And when we look into Morocco, I mean, Morocco is an absolute monarchy with sort of dictatorship. I know Morocco quite well. I've been to the country several times. It's a lovely country, but the truth is that it has a regime which it is what it is. But the leverage that Morocco has with Spain was also given, and with Europe was also given by Europe. So it's kind of using that leverage, and naturally that what here, much more than being a problem of policies inside Spain, I think this has nothing to do with it. It has to do with a certain confidence that Spain had towards Morocco that shouldn't have occurred. a confidence in its borders, a confidence that it probably wouldn't have been influenced by external forces in something like this, and it obviously was. So yes, there was given too much leverage.
Now, Italy says the Schengen region is under threat. Is that a genuine warning or politics aimed at voters back home?
It's a bit of both, I would say. You can understand a genuine concern, but the genuine concern is a reality even for Italy. I mean, when we look into the numbers and we see that just this year, almost 16,000 people tried to go into Italy through its coastal regions, compared to much less in Spain, less than 5,000 compared to Italy. So this could have easily occurred in Italy. And so Meloni doing this kind of shows a hypocritical stance, a lack of unity in Europe. But it shows more than that. It shows that Meloni, when she wants to second the Prime Minister of Spain, Sanchez, towards a completely delusional war against Iran, and second Sanchez in that stance against the US administration or against Israel and what it is doing in Gaza and what it is doing in Cisjordania and in other places, she does that. But when it's easy, she doesn't stand by a European neighbor and a European ally. And that should worry Europe. This stance by Meloni should worry Europe, and even most of the reactions that we are starting to see in Europe is probably showing Europe's most fragile side in both geopolitically and internally.
Now, Spain says it's working closely with Morocco. So, how was the border overwhelmed so quickly then?
Again, on paper, this should have never happened because there's a strict cooperation with Morocco. But the reality is that this happened with no border control, with no control from the Moroccan army. When we see the numbers, it's unbelievable. This isn't an immigration problem. When you have more or less 60,000 people in 24 hours trying to go into a country, this is not an immigration problem. This was a political stunt. This was a political maneuver, and this probably was a political maneuver where Morocco kind of functioned as a sort of muppet from other two countries. And there's reporting and there's positioning from these two countries, and I'm saying Israel and the United States with this administration, that they were probably and most likely behind this. Actually, Israel is already, through many leaders, not denying that it was behind this. So when we have a cooperation on paper, which Spain has with Morocco, but when we see that in reality they kind of just let this happen against all laws and security recommendations, then we see that this Moroccan regime, which is what it is much easier to bribe than one would think.
Finally, Europe wants Morocco to keep people from reaching its borders, but is it giving Rabat enough support to do that?
If it's giving Rabat enough support to do that, I think that it's giving Rabat the support that it assures that it needs, that it calls for. But again, I think that more interesting than that, because I think that Morocco on its side has the needs to stop this. This never happened, and now we see that Spain is actually reacting very fast. We see that much more than half of the people that went in are already going peacefully back to Morocco. So we see that, yes, Morocco probably had the leverage to not let this happen, and also to read this in a completely different way. I just want to go back and say one thing. The declaration by von der Leyen, the European Commission leader, was also very, very appalling. in my perspective, because it didn't react towards Spain. There was no solidarity towards Spain, and again, we have to look at this at a framework that has nothing to do with internal policies in Spain. This was a political stunt. This was a political maneuver that goes probably beyond the extremist regime in Morocco, but that had its force. And so the European Union has to understand that it's much more intelligent to show solidarity in these moments, like Antonio Costa, which is probably one of the few voices, or the only voice that I heard that actually said something as a true leader. And what did he say? He said that any person that goes into Ceuta does not have a free pass in Schengen for his or her movement, and there was lots of misinformation on this. So he kind of pulled it straight, and also showed a solidarity that the European Commission president should have shown right away. And again, Europe shows its more fragile side when we see an extreme right and a far right, which is what the American administration wanted with all this, and also the Israeli government, speaking of, oh no, here comes an invasion of Muslims, when this has nothing to do with this, and the extreme left saying Ceuta should have always been Moroccan. It shouldn't even be Spanish. So we're in between these two extremes, which I think are not the majority. The majority are much more where Antonio Costa stands, a reasonable and direct declaration that he made. And we have to unite. We have to unite. Besides behind the cooperation, understanding that this happened with Spain, it could have happened with any member state in the European Union. And it happened with Spain for the best reasons. It happened with Spain because Pedro Sanchez and this government, with all its flaws, are actually maintaining on the global stage a positioning against what is this attack on Iran, which is dreadful for the world. From the U.S. administration, what is the positioning of the Israeli government today? So this is an attack on all of this, and obviously these two countries were behind this.
Thank you. That was Gonzalo Teles, political commentator, joining us from Lisbon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Kyrgyzstan hosted the Central Asia-Azerbaijan Summit on Friday, focusing on enhancing bilateral relations and economic cooperation. And Miyot sent us this report.
We're coming to you from Cholpon-Ata, Kyrgyzstan's resort town, where the informal consultative meeting of the heads of state of Azerbaijan and the countries of Central Asia has wrapped up. Now, this particular format was established back in November last year, when Azerbaijan was formally admitted into the format of the traditionally C5 grouping countries. This is the first time that Azerbaijan has participated as a full-fledged member. This summit was informal, so that gives you an idea that leaders could speak more openly, more freely, with not so many restrictions imposed by protocol. We've heard some interesting proposal and some quotes here in Cholpon-Ata, so let's go through them, and let's start with Azerbaijan, as it is the first time it's participating as a full-fledged member. Azerbaijan's president Ilham Aliyev told the other leaders that Azerbaijan will be an active member of this consultative format, and for its part will make every effort to further expand cooperation and bring the countries and the peoples more close together. He also said that relations with countries of Central Asia are one of the priorities of Azerbaijan's foreign policy. We've also heard in the opening remarks from Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, who said that Central Asia is experiencing the most successful period in its modern history. He said that Azerbaijan's accession as a full participant in this consultative meetings format marks a new stage in the evolution of the format. He spoke of the region's growing importance and louder voice on the global stage, also adding and reminding everyone about Kazakhstan's election as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. We've heard some proposals. Tajikistan's President Emomali Rahmon proposed establishing a great oil refinery in Central Asia. He made the proposal referring to the ever popular issue of energy security. We've heard from the host, the Kyrgyz President Sadir Japarov, who proposed introducing a single tourist visa for foreigners wishing to visit Central Asian countries, so that they would not have to take out visas for every single one of the countries. Now, this summit, the opening part was that was the main parts that we could hear in the opening remarks. Of course, the leaders had a plentiful agenda of things to discuss, including trade within the region, transport links. As we know, the Middle Corridor, the trade route connecting China to Europe, has become the most popular way to transfer goods that way, and that route goes via Central Asia and South Caucasus, and then on to Europe. Now, before this summit, there was another event here in Cholpon-Ata. It was the official welcoming ceremony for Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev, who is here on a state visit. He met with his Kyrgyz counterpart Sadir Japarov for talks. The two sides signed a number of documents, but one of the documents that stands out is the Treaty of Allied Relations. Now, this document was signed. Of course, it needs to be ratified, but it will take the relations between Azerbaijan and Kyrgyzstan from the level of strategic partnership where they were since 2022 to the highest possible level, the level of an alliance. The two presidents then exchanged the highest state awards, orders. They gave them to each other. And that is pretty much a busy week here in the resort town on the shore of Kyrgyzstan's Issyk-Kul Lake. From us here in Cholpon-Ata, that'd be all for now.
Now, President Ilham Aliyev's state visit to Kyrgyzstan has highlighted the growing political and economic links between the South Caucasus and Central Asia. Talks in Cholpon-Ata focused on turning the two countries' close relationship into wider practical cooperation.
Azerbaijan and Kyrgyzstan have raised their relations to the level of an alliance following talks between Presidents Ilham Aliyev and Sadir Japarov in Cholpon-Ata. The leaders signed the Treaty on Allied Relations following the third meeting of the Interstate Council.
I am confident that this visit will give a new impetus to the further strengthening of our brotherly relations. Kyrgyzstan and Azerbaijan consistently support each other and successfully coordinate approaches on issues of mutual interest. I note with satisfaction that the political dialogue between Kyrgyzstan and Azerbaijan is now at its highest level. Regular contacts and mutual trust lay a solid foundation for the further strengthening of the allied relations established today.
The two sides exchanged a broad package of documents covering international road transport, freight transportation, shipping, and shipbuilding. Further agreements addressed oil product supplies, an energy roadmap through 2028, cybersecurity, statistics, and financial market regulation. The package also included cooperation between Azergold and Kyrgyzaltyn, as well as sister city agreements between Shusha and Cholpon-Ata, Gabala and Karakol, and Ganja and Osh.
Today, we agreed to double the capital of the joint Azerbaijan-Kyrgyzstan investment fund to $200 million. I am confident that this is also not the limit, because the presentation we received on the fund's activities indicates that it is being filled with concrete substance. A great number of projects are being implemented in Kyrgyzstan, creating joint ventures, new jobs, and strengthening the economic potential of our interaction.
Zhaparov said 3 joint projects under the Azerbaijan-Kyrgyz Development Fund had been inaugurated, while 8 more initiatives had been launched. The presidents also discussed transport corridors, Azerbaijan's role in the Middle Corridor, and opportunities for further energy and investment cooperation.
Now, an international exhibition featuring more than 30 artists from 11 countries has opened at Gabala Fest, showcasing painting, sculpture and photography while promoting dialogue between cultures. Dilek Tuna has more.
Hello, we're here in beautiful Gebele. One of the newest additions to this year's Gebele International Music Festival is an exhibition that's bringing together artists from around the world under one roof. Called Crossroad of Cultures, it features more than 30 artists from countries including Azerbaijan, the United Kingdom, Germany, China, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan and South Korea. Through painting, sculpture and photography, the exhibition explores how art can connect different cultures, traditions and generations. But this isn't simply an exhibition where visitors look at works hanging on the wall. There are interactive installations inviting people to become part of the creative process, alongside masterclasses led by internationally recognised artists, giving both adults and children the opportunity to discover new techniques and express their own creativity.
More than 30 artists, local and global, and they come from 11 different countries. And it's been incredible to work with such a rich variety of artists and bring them together. The exhibition has been designed to mimic a crossroads with different journeys that viewers can take. And a good plan behind this exhibition is for the artists and me as a curator to really bridge that gap between Azerbaijan and the UK and have a cross-cultural dialogue.
I use tiny little figures that I paint and put into little box frames and make scenes. My workshop here is the people are choosing figures that look like themselves, and then they paint them with tiny paintbrushes and choose. I have 4 images from this area that they choose one as a backdrop. The ancient Silk Road are recurring themes throughout the exhibition, reflecting both Azerbaijan's artistic traditions and the wider international dialogue the festival hopes to encourage. As Gebele Fest continues, the exhibition is adding another dimension to the festival, reminding visitors that while music may be at its heart, this celebration is also about bringing together different forms of art, creativity and cultural exchange. From Gebele, Dilek Tuna, Natik Mehmedov for A News.
Now, from a celebration of cultural dialogue in Gebelet, we turn now to a conflict where diplomacy remains elusive. 9 people have been killed in overnight Russian strikes on Ukraine, as both sides report intercepting hundreds of drones, and Washington shifts its focus towards peace efforts. Dasha Chernysova reports from Moscow.
Russia's defense ministry says it shot down 371 Ukrainian drones overnight over multiple regions, the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. One of the main cities that appeared to be targeted by Ukraine was Volgograd. Ukrainian drones struck a fuel and energy facility in the south of the city, sparking a fire. Another warehouse belonging to the online retail giant Wildberries was also hit there. Officials say 1 woman was killed after drone debris hit a residential building. 8 people were injured, 2 of them seriously, and windows were shattered in 8 apartment blocks. The attacks also reached Zelenodolsk in Tatarstan, where strikes were reported near Wildberries and Azon logistics hubs. The attacks come as Washington appears to be sending mixed messages on Ukraine. In an interview, President Donald Trump said the United States wants peace, not more missiles. He also said he is not sure whether Washington will grant Ukraine a license to produce ammunition for patriots. Patriot air defense systems, calling the technology highly sensitive. At the same time, Trump says his envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner will travel to Kyiv in the coming days for talks, signaling that diplomatic contacts are continuing even as fighting on the ground intensifies. Dasha Chernashova for A News in Moscow.
Now, from war putting regional security under pressure, we turn to neighboring Georgia, where major new investment is targeting transport links and financial stability. The country has secured a major international backing with a $250 million highway loan from the Asian Development Bank and additional World Bank support for its banking safety net. Nini Nikolashvili has more.
Georgia has just received a major boost to its infrastructure and financing. The Asian Development Bank has approved a $250 million loan to build a highway bypass around Tbilisi. The project covers a 4-lane highway stretching across nearly 19 kilometers, stretching from Tbilisi airport through Lochini to Rustavi. It's part of the east-west highway that connects Georgia and is a key part of a corridor that links Central Asia to Europe. The bank's country director says the bypass will ease congestion, cut travel time, and make freight transport more reliable. The ADB has already put over $2.3 billion into Georgia's roads, including the Batumi and Kobuleti bypasses. Meanwhile, the World Bank is offering additional support to the country by approving a $35 million credit line for Georgia's resolution fund. This fund is designed to offer help if a commercial bank runs into serious trouble by covering costs to restructure rather than shut it down. The agreement was signed by Finance Minister Lasha Khutishvili and World Bank Regional Director Roland Price. Georgia's National Bank President Natia Tunova called it confirmation that the country's bank resolution framework meets international standards. The World Bank money won't be touched under normal conditions. It only activates if the National Bank formally decides that a bank needs help. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
From strengthening trade corridors on land, we turn now to a new push to protect one of the world's most important shipping routes. Pakistan has joined a Saudi-led maritime coalition aimed at protecting commercial shipping, energy routes and freedom of navigation across the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Maram Zia reports from Islamabad.
Pakistan on Thursday backed a Saudi-led coalition aimed at protecting shipping and energy routes through the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and the Gulf of Aden. 14 countries endorsed the maritime defense deal after a meeting in Riyadh. Saudi Arabia said the alliance will strengthen maritime defense cooperation, safeguard freedom of navigation, and secure international trade and energy supply routes. It described the coalition as purely defensive in nature and said it would operate in accordance with international law. The coalition comes after months of attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea forced many ships to reroute around southern Africa, disrupting global supply chains and raising shipping costs. The Bab el-Mandeb carries around 12% of global trade, making it one of the world's busiest maritime choke points. For Pakistan, a significant share of its maritime trade with European market passes through the Bab el-Mandeb and Suez Canal. Securing the corridor also helps safeguard energy imports from the Gulf. The coalition supports Pakistan's wider maritime security interests and reinforces its long-standing strategic and defense partnership with Saudi Arabia. Mariam Zia, A News, Islamabad.
All right, after the break, we'll continue with reports from our correspondents around the world. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Primetime. Now, Iran has threatened further consequences after a U.S. strike on Qasem Island killed members of one family, as Tehran says it has retaliated against American bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. Turaj Shvililu has more.
The Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf has warned that the US will pay the price over a fatal strike on Iran's Qeshm Island on Thursday. The message came after 3 members of a family died after their house was attacked. In the early hours of Thursday, US forces struck the island, located in the Persian Gulf, following a 3-day pause in attacks between Tehran and Washington. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai also slammed the attack, which killed the parents and 2-year-old son of the family of 5. He said it echoed the acts of terrorism committed by the Islamic State, also known as ISIS. In a statement, he said the attack aimed to punish Iran for safeguarding its rights, dignity, and independence. Baghai also said, quote, "Such crimes will never generate authority or credibility for the criminals," referring to the American side. In the latest related development, Iran's army said on Friday that in response to the attack on Qeshm Island, it fired kamikaze drones at fighter jet hangars, satellite communication systems, and equipment warehouses belonging to the US military at the Ahmad al-Jaber base in Kuwait. Earlier, the army said it had targeted the Sheikh Isa base in Bahrain by firing Arash suicide drones at electricity generators, navigation systems, and administrative and logistics support buildings of the US military. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Afghanistan says 880 citizens have returned home after being released from Pakistani prisons. This comes as Islamabad continues its wider campaign to repatriate undocumented Afghans. Tamim Bahis has more.
Afghanistan's Ministry of Refugees and Repatriation says 880 Afghan refugees have been released from prisons in Pakistan and have now returned home. The ministry says the group includes both families and individuals who were detained in Pakistan for various reasons. While the country has not issued a specific statement on this latest release, Islamabad has consistently maintained that Afghan nationals are detained for immigration violations or criminal offences in violation of Pakistani law. Pakistani authorities have also said their ongoing repatriation policy is aimed at addressing illegal immigration and security concerns, and that those without valid legal documents are expected to return to Afghanistan. After arriving in Afghanistan through the Torkham and Spin Boldak border crossings, the returnees were provided with basic humanitarian assistance. They were then taken to their home provinces. The latest returns come against the backdrop of Pakistan's broader campaign to repatriate undocumented Afghan nationals, which has seen hundreds of thousands leave the country over the past 2 years. The policy has drawn concern from international humanitarian organizations, which has called for returns to be voluntary, safe and dignified, given Afghanistan's ongoing economic and humanitarian challenges. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Now, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan have begun laying the first submarine fiber optic cable across the Caspian, creating a new high-capacity digital route between Europe and Asia. Farza Kalmoziner has more.
Construction is underway on the first submarine fiber optic cable linking Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, a project aimed at creating a new digital route between Europe and Asia. A cable-laying vessel has left the port of Baku and is heading towards Aktau. If weather conditions remain favorable, the nearly 390-kilometer cable is expected to be laid across the Caspian Sea in the next 15 to 20 days. The project is being developed by Caspian Link, a joint venture between Kazakhstan's Kazakh Telecom and Azerbaijan's Azer Telecom. The cable was manufactured in China, shipped to Kazakhstan's port of Kuruk, and then transported to Baku in 3 cable baskets weighing a combined 600 tons before being loaded onto the vessel. The ship weighs more than 20,000 tons and uses a dynamic positioning system to stay on course during the operation. Around 70 crew members are on board, and both ends of the cable have already been tested. The vessel also carries a dedicated splicing room in case repairs are needed during installation. The cable will run for almost 390 kilometers and contain 32 optical fibers with a theoretical capacity of up to 400 terabits per second. That's well above Kazakhstan's current internet demand of between 4 and 7 terabits per second. The biggest goal, however, is international data transit. Around 90% of internet traffic between China and Europe currently travels through undersea cables, while only 10% goes over land. The new Trans-Caspian route is expected to offer an alternative connection between East and West, reduce signal delays, and strengthen Kazakhstan's role as a regional digital transit hub. The project is due to be completed by the end of 2026. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A-News.
All right, it's been a pleasure bringing you Primetime tonight. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.